Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I want to talk to you today about this icon, this wonderful thing, this heroic entrepreneur model. And I want to bring it up because it was one of the things I struggled with the most when I began my first company, because it's really hard in the Bay Area not to just stumble over this model over and over again, this heroic, person who risks it all and does all these amazing things and bets it again and wins. And the problem was I wasn't that guy, right? So I was a PhD at Lawrence Livermore Lab. I was in the evening MBA program, keeping my job, staying safe. Tuition assistance, okay. My parents aren't rich. I needed my job. But I saw at Livermore all these incredible technologies, some of which had the real potential to change industries. And I was very agitated by this, but didn't really know what to do. And so I started by doing the MBA. And then in my second year, I began to research potential technologies. I found one that looked really pretty interesting. And so very cautiously decided I'd enter the Berkeley Business Plan competition with my team, Wrapped Industries. And we made it to the semifinal round, made it to the final round. And then in April of 2002, some of you may have actually been there, I was up in front of this large crowd pitching, and then they had the third place winner, blah, blah, blah. Second place winner, blah, blah, blah. First place winner, Wrapped Industries. And the crowd goes berserk, and everybody's shaking me on the shoulder, and I'm sitting there in the front row with this incredible thought bubble over my head. Oh, crap. Now I have to quit my job. This and this model, this idea, so there you go. Oh, congratulations, Peter. Well, so this model that we have, this idea, this icon, right, of this heroic, visionary male entrepreneur who bets it all, like Fred Smith, who takes incomplete payroll to Vegas in order to make his next payroll. These are the stories we told ourselves, and we're like, I'm not that guy. I am not that guy. So for those of you of a certain age, probably the most iconic version of this story is Ted Turner, all right? Ted, Captain Outrageous Turner. Ted Turner does things that people tell him not to do, and he succeeds at them. Like, that is so not me. And the story goes that Ted, had a small billboard business, and he saw the future of television in the 1970s, and he bet it all, and he bought this broken down UHF station, and he turned it into CNN. And then he saw the future of Major League Sports, and then he bought the Atlanta Braves, and he turned it into a media powerhouse. And of course, the apotheosis of this whole story is that he marries liberal icon Jane Fonda. So that's the top of the story. Oh, man. Okay, so years later, I actually encountered the autobiography, the first autobiography. And it's kind of interesting if you read it that the real story is not quite what we think. So it turns out that Ted trained as a financial accountant. So he was a very good accountant, but it wasn't his company, it was his dad's company. And it turns out that in the 70s, we had high tax rates, so billboards had very favorable depreciation rates, and they threw off a lot of cash. So Ted's dad's business had a lot of taxable income, and Ted realized we could have a loss-making venture to basically offset those gains. That's easy.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, it turns out that TVs and billboards are very similar business models. It's selling advertising. And really, Channel 17, their problem was they just didn't have very good advertising. So all they needed was better billboard ads. And, 15% of his billboards were vacant at any given moment. So you could immediately increase the free advertising for Channel 17. Now, the purchase price for Channel 17 was $2.5 million, which was actually a bargain. Most TV stations in the 70s were trading at 10x that price. So Ted engineered a stock swap between his company and the owners of the TV station, and he purchased it with no cash. Oh, and that purchase of the Atlanta Braves in 1976, well, it turns out that Channel 17 had acquired the long-term broadcasting rights from the perennially losing Atlanta Braves. It's one of the reasons why they were losing money. They were paying $600,000 a year just to retain the broadcasting rights. Well, the Braves were losing $1 million per year. The owners wanted to sell for $10 million. And so Ted, being a good accountant, looked on the books and said, you're expensing a lot of stuff that you could actually capitalize. About $1 million on their balance sheet that they could have actually capitalized. So he negotiated the following deal. He'd pay him $1 million down, and he'd use their money for that. And then over the next 8 years, he'd pay out the remaining $9 million. Now, he was already paying $600,000 for the broadcasting rights. So, for an extra $650,000 a year, he could retain the broadcasting rights and own the team. Now, does that sound like a risk taker? Interestingly, years later, Malcolm Gladwell spotted this story, actually. And Malcolm Gladwell went on to kind of say, look, if you look at successful entrepreneurs, you don't see this risk-taking behavior. Successful entrepreneurs are actually careful. They're analytical, they're risk-averse, and they're patient. Gladwell goes on to sort of say that the model for the successful entrepreneur is much more like the predator. They sit in the bush all afternoon. They wait and they watch and they study like a scientist. And in fact, many of the characteristics of the entrepreneur and the predator have in common. You're willing to look around, you're willing to study, you're willing to wait. But, here's the difference, and here was the thing that I needed to learn. When the moment came and that big, lame wildebeest comes wandering right past and brushes your whiskers, you've got to act. You've got to move. So here's what I learned. Entrepreneurship is not about taking risk, although there inevitably will be some risk along the way. You've got to be willing to look for what's missing in the world around you and ache for it. And you've got to be observant, you've got to gather data and question assumptions. And finally, when the opportunity arises, and it will for many of you, you've got to choose to act. You've got to choose to act, to do it. And guess what? This isn't about being the iconic, heroic person. This is about you and your communities, wherever you are, starting something and doing something that matters and makes a difference. And that's what I learned here. Thanks very much.
Wow.